as you all know, I'm Jennifer Jarland. I'm the recycling program coordinator for Kane County and have been for 8 years, actually. July 9th will be my 8-year anniversary here. June 9th, like just around the corner. And the job that I do for Kane County is mainly I am the recycling hotline. So I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of email questions about how to recycle X, Y, Z. I try to answer all those questions in these presentations on the website in the Green Guide. I also publish a lot of information and do these presentations in my attempts to educate the public. I also do manage the electronics recycling programs, the hazardous waste programs, so the larger scale recycling programs that for things that you can't put at the curb. The curbside programs are all managed by the municipalities and or townships that you may live in. And I do advise and collaborate with the people that are managing those programs for all the different cities, help educate them on what the solid waste plan says and everything, but mainly they're all run by themselves. But I try to keep a handle on the information so that I can share that with the public. Also, I am working in composting, trying to get food scrap composting happening, working with state colleagues on that, but also I'm proud to say there are 3 communities now in Kane County who have curbside food scrap composting, which I will talk about in the presentation. So that's generally what I do. What I'll be talking about today is the recycling crisis that we've already touched on that's been happening in the last couple of years. I'll talk about what used to be the 3 R's. I call it the 4 R's plus composting. I'll go over the guidelines of what you do recycle in your curbside cart and what you shouldn't recycle in your curbside cart. And then go over the details of those. Also beyond the bin, so places that you can take things to get them recycled within the community. There's a whole bunch of other opportunities for recycling beyond your curbside bin. Excuse me for just a second. I'm just going to turn up the brightness of my screen so I don't have to keep looking backwards. There we go. I'll go over the event dates and the drop-off information, household hazardous waste program opportunities, and the Green Guide, and how I try to get the word out, as well as how you can advertise some of your events that are happening. And then we'll leave a good amount of time for questions and answers at the end. And I know you'll all have a lot of questions, and some people have brought visual aids as questions. What do you do with this thing? And I love that when that happens, so thank you for doing that. And I'm so glad to see you here too. Thank you for coming. All right, so it's kind of a long story and I don't want to get too into it, but what has happened? How many have heard of the Chinese national sword or understand a little bit about what happened with China last year in regards to recycling? Okay, so a few people. So what happened is over the last 20 years, as America has built its recycling infrastructure, there was this very convenient reverse logistics arrangement that arose in partnership with China. They were sending large containers full of their products to America, and then they were empty containers, and we were putting in our raw recycled commodities in there to send them back to China, where they were taking them and turning them into new plastic products or paper products. Mostly plastic and paper, but they were taking up to 80% of American recyclable materials for quite a long time over the years. That fluctuated a bit, but at one point up to 80% of it. A couple of years ago, they started putting off some alarm bells and going, wow, the stuff you're sending us is full of garbage. We don't want the garbage. You got to clean it up. Nobody really listened. The technology hasn't really caught up to our idea on single stream, meaning throw everything into one bin and then it goes off to the sorting facility to get sorted. They've come a long way, and it's amazing to see. There is a video online, actually, that you can watch about that on the Kane County Recycles webpage on the far right at the bottom, your curbside recycling journey, if you want to see how they sort things out at the facility. Great video. But what happened is that they just couldn't clean it up enough, or didn't make the effort that was required. And unfortunately, the Chinese government decided, fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, decided to write a legislation that required a 0.5% contamination maximum, which basically right now what our Illinois sorting facilities are telling us is that 25 to 30% of the volume that they receive is not recyclable and is going straight back to the landfill once they sort it out. It's over a quarter of the total of what people are putting in their bins are a mistake. So, you know, and then they were sorting that out, but still stuff was getting through and getting to China. There's no way that our industry is going to be able to reach 0.5% contamination from that. So basically what they did is shut their doors. And so that caused a whole fervor here in America and other countries that were sending their materials to China because it just stopped. And again, that was a lot of paper and the plastics. So other Southeast Asian countries also have some capacity for recycling plastics. So of course everyone scrambled and tried to start sending their stuff elsewhere, and then those countries were all overwhelmed and went, whoa, we can't take your stuff either, you know. So what's happened, and I don't have a lot of information on this yet because it's still just starting to stew. The ideal is that we start to build the industry here onshore, where we can take that material and process it and turn it into new products, right? That is happening. I've heard, you know, through the trade mags and word of mouth that there are new paper plants and plastic processing facilities being built. Interestingly enough, some of them are being built by Chinese investors, which is ironic, but you know, interesting. You know, they see the need and they're like, okay, we're going to make this happen. And so it is happening, but slowly, because those sorts of facilities are obviously take a long time to plan, get permitted, to build them, to get them operating. So what can we do now was the question that myself and my colleagues started asking. What are we going to do about this? This is tragic. We need to support recycling any way we can. Education. It comes back down to education. It's like, okay, so what are we going to do? If, you know, the government's not going to solve this problem necessarily with laws on our side. We need to try to get the individuals to understand better what it is that we can put in our bins. There's been a lot of prevalent misunderstandings, which I will touch on in the yes-no section of this talk, but plastics has been a long-standing misunderstanding because a lot of the plastic objects that you get have the little recycling triangle on there, but it doesn't mean it's recyclable. Obviously, that's unclear and very confusing for people. So a lot of those things are going in the bin that shouldn't be. That's probably the number one problem. But so what we did, myself and my colleagues throughout the state, who are the recycling program coordinators in the other counties, as well as other stakeholders from the Illinois EPA, from the sorting facilities, from the companies that haul our waste and recycling, from the national associations like the National Waste and Recycling Association. These all sent in representatives to this task force that was formed. There was about 50 people on this task force, I should say, this task force is still going. But our initial push was, what are we going to do? How are we going to get the message out there to the whole state of Illinois about what you can and cannot recycle? And what happened is that we came up with this very simple poster. And I'm going to talk about that later in the presentation, but this was the outcome of the initial work that the task force did. Just trying to make it easy for everybody, no matter what the demographic, no matter what their background, like what's the one message, so that we're all using the same message. That's the other thing, is that throughout the years, everybody comes up with their best idea of how to educate, and then there's all these different messages out there, which is, again, very confusing for people. So I'll talk a little bit more about the work that the task force did on that, but we also did, we have a little YouTube video that explains it. We did a big push out on America Recycles Day in November. That was when we released this poster, and each of us sent it out to all our municipalities and asked them to send it out to everybody. And we did that through the whole state. And so we're hoping that everybody is starting to adopt these guidelines. And now we have a meeting later this month where we're going to be talking more about, okay, how can we get some state funding through the IEPA to do more TV ads and more outreach, and maybe print some stickers that look like this that can go onto the dumpsters, because the haulers are all like, profit and loss, and who's going to pay to have a ton of these stickers printed. So maybe we can create a grant program or something like that to help the haulers do that, help educators to print these out and get them out to people. So that's what we're working on now, is a wider reach. So talking about the R's, let's all together say what the 3 R's are. Everybody? Reduce, reuse, recycle. I love it. I do that with my kids when I talk to them, but I do it with the adults as well, just because it's fun. So we all know the 3 R's. And the 4th R that I always like to highlight, that I put at the top of the list actually, is rethink, because that's the most important thing we have to be doing. I will talk more about that in the following slides. And then, of course, compost is a big piece of that puzzle as well, solving the problem that we have currently with the avalanche of materials coming down the mountain from our consumerist habits. It's really, really, when I think about how much garbage is being produced out there in the world every day, it's just tragic. So rethinking is key. How are we going to stop making garbage in the first place? And so I like to tell a little story. The average American creates 4.5 pounds of trash every day. That's a widely spoken statistic that I suspect is possibly outdated, because I've been saying that for at least 10 years. But it's the one that the EPA has on their website, and that's why no one's ever updated that. So, but that's quite a lot. You add that up, it's 135 pounds a month, In Illinois, there was actually a study done in 2009 where they did a study of landfills and what was being delivered to landfills, and divided that per capita and came up with 8 pounds per person per day in Illinois of trash that's going in the landfills. That's just what's being landfilled. So when I discovered this about 10 years ago, that was a 4.5 pounds of trash, I thought, well, I wonder how much I produce, and I wonder how low I could go. So I did a little project at home, and I decided to do 0 waste at home. And for 30 days, tried to create no trash. And so it was myself and my husband and my mom who visited for 2 weeks out of that 4 weeks. So it was 2.5 people actually over 30 days. And how low do you think we kept that? How many pounds do you think we produced in a month? Have a wild guess. 10? Close?
2.5 people?
2.5 people, 30 days. 20.
Less than 10.
Less than 10. You're the closest. So it was 4 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and it all fit in that Tostito bag right there, which was the one bag of chips that I bought all month long. So here's where the rethinking comes in, because I love potato chips. I don't have a sweet tooth, but I love salty things. And it is really an interesting process, not only for your waste, but for your health, to try to do this thing. Because you start to look at your products that you're buying in the stores and, wow, that's triple wrapped in plastic. Well, I can't buy that. Or the potato chips, they're in garbage packaging. Okay, I won't buy it. I really, really can't stand those individually wrapped chips inside of another big chip thing. And I know a lot of parents use those for school lunches and things, but buy the big one and put it in a reusable container. Those are some of the kinds of things you can do.
And then your kid reads it at school, that's the problem with that.
Right.
It doesn't always work.
Yeah, that's right, that's true. So there are washable, sandwich bags and things like that you can get now too. But so the way that we did this is that I really bought everything that I could in bulk at the local co-op that we had, or Whole Foods does sell in bulk. I know Mariano's has a section that's bulk. They're not everywhere, but you can find them. And so buying in bulk with your own containers stops all of that garbage. And then we composted all our food scraps, of course, and then recycled. Reduced, reused, and recycled everything possible, so that did not go into my count of 4 pounds because that was being recycled. And then I sewed my own net vegetable bags and carried my own bags so that I wasn't creating any of that garbage. So what's in there? What it was is just a bunch of little plastic, wrappers that come off of the top of your vitamin bottles, which is recycled, but not the wrapper. And I busted my mom in the where she had her suitcase sitting in there stashing garbage in her suitcase. And I said, no, put it in. This is part of it. So she had bought a CD one day, not cellophane wrapper that came off.
Are the tops are recyclable of medicine ball, did you say?
Yes, they are.
Oh,
And I will
okay.
cover that just momentarily, but yes. Yeah, so anyway, that was a great project. And I do challenge you all to see if you can do something like that. And it may be too much to say, I'm going for zero waste, but maybe you could look at your garbage and go, what's the most frequently thrown away item that you have? What kind of packaging is it? Can you buy that product some other way without that packaging? Just start looking at your garbage and thinking, how can I change this equation a little bit? All right, so I'm going to focus on, I have so much to say about composting too, but because of time limitations, I can't go into it too deeply. I do, again, want to say that in Kane County, there are currently three ride-along programs for food scrap composting. You can put your food scraps in with your yard waste, which is already being collected in the city of Batavia, in the city of Geneva, and in the Mill Creek community. Those three all have it written into their contract that can be done. Hopefully it will become more widespread. I know Elgin is talking about it as well. But for now, this is the information I took straight off of the City of Batavia website. Not easy to find. When I went to look for it, it actually took me a minute to find it. You've got to get into the garbage and recycling. They don't have it highlighted. You've got to hit yard waste. And then this information is inside of there. But nevertheless, this is the list of things that you can put in. The basics, but they don't want meat or bones or shells or grease just because pet waste, obviously no garbage. Just because those things are problematic for certain composting facilities. So they're trying to make it a successful program by keeping it to the surefire compostable items.
Can you, what if you don't have yard waste? Because you don't have a yard. Can you put it just food waste in those brown bags?
It's a good question. You might want to mix it with some leaves or something. You would have to soak it. It's very wet, usually, food scraps.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good question, though. I would be happy to brainstorm that with you.
In brown craft bags.
You can put it in brown craft bags with a sticker on it for yard waste. You could freeze it and then put it in there the day before or something like that, too. But they're probably going to pick it up and go like once. So, I don't know. Yes.
You might look around too and see if you have neighbors who have a compost pile.
True. Yeah, backyard composting is the best thing you can do because then it doesn't have to travel anywhere and you can make your compost and use it in your yard.
You can put coffee grounds in a compost heap, you just can't put them in these bags.
You can put them in the bags.
It says no, I thought it said no.
It's the way the commas are. I thought the same thing when I first read it. The way it's worded, you say, but no liquids, and then it looks like no liquids, comma. It's not comma coffee grounds.
Right.
It's the eggshells with no liquids.
That's correct.
Pause. See, I read it.
Eggshells but no eggs? Is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is right off the Batavia website. That could be worded better.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
worded.
sorry about that.
Okay, you look like it said no coffee grounds.
You can put coffee grounds
Yeah, I
in
read the
there.
same thing.
Okay, and we do sell backyard compost bins through the University of Illinois Extension Office if you have a backyard and wanted to do that too. I'm going to move along, and just because I'm watching the time, and I too tend to go on a bit. So I wanted to get into this part because this always spurs a lot of questions. So hopefully I will answer a lot of your questions as I'm talking if you want to hold them to the end because I might hit on it actually. So again, this is the poster that we created in both English and Spanish, so you have that copy there. It's in the green guide as well on page 11 in the English form. I have a number of these. If you wanted more than what you have on your chair, we can give those to you afterwards. Also, it is available online for you to print if you need it. Just going over and I wanted to say too, this again is very simplified because we wanted to make it really easy for everybody to see at a glimpse. I know a lot of you have inquiring minds and you want to know more details. Well, if you do, On the website, this is the first quarter of this page of text that's on the Kane County Recycles webpage of the fine print of what you can actually put in. But this is just trying to make it real easy. See, metal. Okay, so you can recycle. Somehow these got in a different order than they are on the poster. I'm going to use my slide. So paper is pretty obvious, just office paper, newspaper, cardboard, magazines. It's the basic stuff. Egg cartons also. Paperback books are okay as well. Metal, steel and aluminum containers, and foil. This is a bad picture of the foil because actually we want the foil rolled into a baseball-sized ball, just gently crunched. You don't have to squeeze it, just crunch it down into a ball. It helps them separate it more easily because if it's flat and thin like that, it might get separated as paper. So we're still working. These images were, donated to the task force by someone who already had the images, and there were a couple issues with them. But so we want that in the ball. Glass, bottles, and jars. Pretty simple. Most of this stuff is, your household containers. You can see that's what's recyclable. So glass bottles and jars. You can see that the lids are on. That is our, again, very simplified message to replace the caps and lids on everything, even if it's glass with plastic, because it's just an easier thing to say. But if I want to get down into the nitty-gritty of it, it's actually better to separate the metal from the glass and throw them in separately. And the plastic lids that are on glass bottles, just throw them away.
The cartons, I'm really surprised because those are really hard to repulp.
And so cartons are recyclable now. And there is a council called the American Carton Council under the Chemistry Council. I think, what are they called? The American Chemistry Council? Something like that. They found a way to process this, and there are certain plants that are doing it. I've seen the process, and they are promoting. They want the cartons. They want the material.
It's good fiber, but
it is. They have a way they heat it.
Yeah, they have to heat it through a dispersion unit.
Yeah, and then separate the different materials because they are lined with the plastic silver lining inside, and then the paper. So, but they do want it in there.
Okay.
And again, this was the consensus of the task force, which was made up of all these stakeholders and all the different haulers. It was really interesting coming to agreement among these 50 stakeholders because sometimes one facility would say, no, we don't want it. But all the rest were saying, yeah, we take it, there's a market for it, we can recycle it. So we would put it on the list. I might just say at this point, just before I forget, that what makes something recyclable or not is a good question. To put it simply, there's two things. One, it has to be able to be sorted out in the sorting facility using the technology that we currently have. They have to be able to separate it and sort it properly. Two, it has to be marketable. There has to be a market for it. There has to be someone out there who's going to buy that and then turn it into something else. And that's the problem with the plastics, is that there's a lack of those markets for low-grade plastic. There's no one actually pelletizing it and turning it into a reusable type of plastic cullet, which, it's cheaper to make plastic out of petroleum than it is out of recycled plastic currently, because a lot of it is low-grade, because there are so many different kinds and you can't mix them together because they, I forgot my third point. That happens sometimes. My brain starts moving faster than my mouth. But, the plastics are just a huge problem for recycling. Because of the transportation, that's what I was going to say. Just because of the intensive process it takes for you throwing it in the bin, getting hauled, getting sorted, getting hauled again, getting turned into pellets, getting turned into something else. There's just so much happening in there that the costs go way up, and there's not a lot of value in the material. So avoid plastic wherever you can is my motto.
Do the chasing arrows give any indication as to what's a low grade?
No, but let me go into plastics now. Let me talk about plastics. So plastic, bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars are recyclable. That's it. Bottles, tubs, jugs, jars, period. If it is any other shape than that, don't put it in your recycling bin, please.
What would be an example of that?
Trays.
Bags, trays, flower pots, children's toys, pieces of broken lawn furniture, old storage containers, just things that are not kitchen containers, or kitchen or household, I should say. Household, plastic, bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars.
Flower pots you can take back to the nurseries a lot of times.
Yes.
Yes.
Prescription bottles.
Prescription bottles, the orange ones, are not.
What about the green ones?
Well, you said the lids, you should probably throw the lids away.
Okay, here's where plastics go berserk. Can I just finish and then we'll hold questions to the end because I've gotten out 2 questions already. But the prescription bottles are not recyclable, in my understanding. I don't know, they're made of some kind of harder and very darkly colored plastic that they don't want in their any color. But vitamin bottles are okay. And the lids do go back on. If it's a plastic container with a plastic lid, absolutely yes. Put it together and recycle it, because they will get recycled.
Or like a Tupperware set, almost.
Except that Tupperware is not recyclable, actually. Because Tupperware is a different kind of plastic. That's like a reusable container, right, rather than a recyclable one. So forget the numbers is my other note. So the rule on plastic is recycle plastic bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, and don't worry about that number because the number tells you what kind of resin it is made out of. That's all. That's all it's telling you anymore. Back when they first started doing that, they were hopeful that, and ideally, and theoretically, all the plastics would be recyclable if they could sort it and if there was a market for it. But that's not how it's turned out. But a lot of the plastics manufacturing companies, the packaging manufacturers have that mold already made and it's got that thing on it and they just keep doing it, you know. So and a lot of state laws require that it's imprinted on there in the chasing triangle symbol. So there's just, though our industry has been trying to fight against that and say, please stop putting that on there, we're not making a lot of headway. So it comes down again to education and individual behavior that we've got to try to change. So just don't worry about the numbers on the plastics. Just stick to the rule of bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, and you will be helping a lot. Now, moving on to the no section of the poster. That was really tricky trying to fit just a really quick synopsis of what you shouldn't be putting in the bin because basically everybody puts everything in the recycling bin, you know. So there was a giant list of things. It was hundreds of items long what the facilities came back to us with of what shouldn't be in the recycling. So we tried to categorize it into a couple of main large categories. This is the #1 problem, plastic bags, because a lot of people put their recyclables into the plastic bag in their house and then they just go out and tie it up and throw it in. Don't do that. Please empty your recyclables out loose into the bin because once they get in the truck and then they come to the sorting facility, they get scooped onto the conveyor belt and through the facility to be sorted. It needs to be loose so they can get at it. The other thing with plastic bags is that once they're in that system, they get really tangled around all the sorting machinery. And at the end of the day, those the sorting screens, they're called, where the paper goes over the top and the containers fall through and go to the other part to be sorted, those end up looking like a piñata by the, halfway through. They stop the plant twice a day to go in there manually with knives and cut all the plastic bags out, which then end up going to the landfill. All the plastic bags that go to a sorting facility are going to end up in the landfill because they're soiled. So if you have plastic bags, you can recycle them if you keep them clean, dry, and empty and take them to the grocery store and put them into the box in the lobby there by the carts. That's what you do with plastic bags. If you need to collect your recyclables in the house in something, you can use the plastic bag, as I said, and empty it, or what I do at my place is I have a paper bag. And then I just reuse that as much as I can until it's a goner, and then I just throw it in with the recycling, Big items, they are always finding, anything you could name, fill in the blank of, pieces of barbecue, pieces of a fender of a car parts, furniture and propane tanks and hazardous waste and all kinds of things that we don't want in there.
If it's got metal,
basketball hoops.
Scrappers will get it soon.
That's right. So scrap metal underground, put it out by your bin the night before trash day, and it will probably go away and it will get recycled. But also there's scrap metal facilities where you can take stuff to, and they might even give you a few cents for it. Furniture, obviously we want to reuse everything that we possibly can. Goodwill and other thrift stores will take that stuff. Styrofoam is also listed under there. We do have recycling options. Dark Container Corp in North Aurora does styrofoam. Shredded paper used to be something that we could take in the recycling bins as long as it was in a paper bag and sealed and labeled shredded paper. Well, in the task force, that was a lengthy discussion as well. They just said it's so problematic. You can imagine the paper bags get torn or people don't seal them. Probably the stuff gets everywhere. It turns into confetti in the sorting facility. It gets everywhere in every single different stream of materials as a contaminant. So they said, honestly, it would be better if we don't have that coming through. So as an option in Kane County, what we've done for people who do prefer to shred their documents at home, because we do shredding events as well, which I'll cover in a minute, but you can bring that to the book recycling area of our events, the already shredded paper, and we'll throw it in with the books that are going for pulping and it will get recycled. No tanglers, long, skinny, flexible things that are going to get tangled on everything. We don't want any of that, even if it's made of metal or plastic or what. No clothing, again, obviously reusable. Lots of drop boxes around where you can take clothing and shoes and accessories to get them reused. And then obviously we don't want any yucky stuff in there. Food, liquid, diapers, lots of dirty diapers. Why? I don't know. But that was, again, a top item on the list of what they don't want. Batteries, needles, obviously, and those also have other programs, which I'll talk to. I am so running out of time today. I'm giving you a lot more information than I normally do because you're also interested, but just quickly, so the couple of clarifying points on the guidelines I just said. Caps and lids I've gone over. Basically, the simple rule to share with people who may not have as inquiring minds as you is put them on. Just put them on, they'll deal with it on the other end. We'll recycle everything we possibly can, and what we can't, we won't. But if you want to remove the metal lids from the glass containers, that's my personal advice to you. That works better. Clean your containers, but not obsessively. You don't have to use a whole lot of water cleaning them out. You know, if it's a liquid, if it's a drink, just empty it. You don't even have to really rinse those unless you want to do that for your own space cleanliness. But the bean cans and peanut butter jars, yeah, put hot water in there and shake it up and try to get them clean. Bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars only. Tubs. People say, but what's a tub mean? Well, a tub is basically a dimensional, wide-mouthed container that has a bottom and sides taller than an inch. So trays are not okay, even if they've got a shallow, but I was saying about an inch, then the machines will be able to capture that as a tub, and they will go to the right place. If they're too thin, they actually end up with the paper. So that's the rule on that. No plastic bags, full or empty. No flexible plastic packaging. That's another thing, because it's got the recyclable symbol on it, like, you know, the bean bags and the Ziploc flexible plastic bags. You get rice and stuff, and those are not recyclable.
What about the big Costco lettuce containers?
Yes, so tubs. Sorry, let me go back to the tub. Tubs, yes. Lettuce containers, strawberry containers, yes. Clamshells are like two tubs hooked together, so yes. Again, a dimensional object with sides taller than an inch. Those are all, and the lettuce containers. But the lids to those lettuce containers are too thin and flat, so those should go in the trash.
And what about fruit containers that are like plastic mesh kind of thing?
The mesh,
Yeah,
Like a basket
like a basket, yeah.
with holes.
yeah, I'm not sure I've seen, I mean, like strawberries?
Yeah.
If they're shaped like a tub, even if they have holes in them and are you can put them in, yeah. But like the avocado bags and stuff like that, onion bags, that mesh stuff, no.
No, yeah.
Okay.
So black is okay?
If you read the fine print I showed you before, it says no black plastic. Yeah, no black plastic, please. Yeah, I should add that to this list. Thank you. No plastic utensils, no cups, lids, or straws. No styrofoam, take it to DART. No napkins, paper towels, or plates. Though they are paper, they are not recyclable. They're low-grade paper and often soiled. And no batteries, but there are lots of places to take those. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. There is a list of all of the stuff in the A to Z list in the guide. There's 3 pages of it online. There's even more of places that you can take everything that you can almost think of somewhere in the community to get it recycled. Here's a list of our events that we have scheduled for 2019. We've had a couple of the events already. We've got another one coming up this Saturday. I mixed it up a little bit this time. As you can see, there are different items for each event. Always electronics and books. Electronics and books every time. Shred, we're having 4 events this year. So we've got one this Saturday, and then the second Saturday in August, and the second Saturday in September. Paint, we're doing 3 times, May, July, and September. And then the July 13th is always, the July event is always the extravaganza where we add everything that we possibly can. I'm looking at doing scrap metal actually at this one too, so that will be added to the list, but I haven't yet confirmed it. This year we're also trying something new and going to 2 new locations for the last 2 events of the year, trying to serve people in the western part of the county and in the southern part of the county as well. So if you have friends in those areas, spread the word that we'll be coming closer to their home. We have 2 permanent electronics drop-off locations, one in Batavia and one in West Dundee, that you can take electronics to 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And those hours are just slightly different between the 2. It's a little bit earlier in West Dundee. And this is just a map of where they are and then our collection event site. So we're trying to serve the community conveniently. Household hazardous waste. There are 2 options for the City of Batavia residents. You can have a home collection done now, and that's a new thing that's come on. They came on with the county to join the home collection program we have. You can once a year call a number, and that information is in the guide and online, and schedule a collection from your home for hazardous waste. And they will come and pick it up and take it for free. And that is paid for by the city and the county. So, or the Naperville Hazardous Waste Facility is open every weekend and open to the public for free for hazardous waste. The one main thing they don't take is latex paint, but Ace Hardware stores will take liquid latex paint. I can get you that information, and it is online as well. So the Green Guide is something that we publish once a year, and it is, again, my attempt at answering all those questions that I get throughout the year in one place. And so each year it's a little bit different. I always have the events in there, of course, and how to contact your own waste hauler. And then there's information on the electronics, the hazardous waste, the paint, the A to Z list, but it's a wealth of information. And if you do want a copy, a paper copy of the guide mailed to you in January when the new one comes out, just contact me. My business cards are up here, but also my contact information is right there on the guide. Happy to add you to the list. We have about 1,500 people on that individual mailing list currently. You can also pick it up at libraries and civic centers around the county. We do distribute it to all the different municipalities and the public works offices and things like that.
It's online as well?
And it's online to download. But if you're going to go online for the information, I suggest just sticking to the live online pages because they get updated weekly or whenever they need updating, whereas this guide is locked in time in December before we print it. So things do change sometimes. And then the Kane County Connects, I do publish an article at least once every 2 weeks, sometimes more frequently, regarding recycling in the Kane County Connects online newsletter. And you can subscribe to that quite easily by going to the countyofkane.org website, and you see it right at the top, and then how to join that. You can opt to have that delivered to your inbox every day, because it's a daily newsletter, daily blog. Or you can select the once a week update option if you don't want so many emails, and then you just get the one, I think it comes out on the Saturday, and it'll have the 5 top read articles of the week in there. And wonderfully, most often the recycling article is one of those top read articles. So you should get it each time that way. And also, this card up here, if you want to come get that, is the Kane County Connects card, so it has the information on there. It's also got our county outreach coordinator's contact on there, so that if you have community events happening in Kane County that you want to get the word out about, he'd love to hear about it. He'll put an article in there. We have a 12,000 person readership currently, or maybe more, so that's there for you as well. And as long as I'm on that topic too, here on the table are my business cards, as well as more information about the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, which I didn't spend a lot of time on today. It's a group that formed in 2012 to work on advancing food scrap composting in Illinois. through advocacy, through program creation, through policy, through education and outreach, and through market development, trying to create the market for the end use of compost as well. And I've been very active with that group. Again, it's a lot of the people that do my job in the different counties, but also other people in the composting industry have come together. We have over 100 members now and working on a new website. And we also have this great program called We Compost, which I encourage you all to check out. And it's a voluntary recognition program for restaurants that compost. Restaurants, businesses, institutions, schools, all of those. So if you know of any that are composting their food scraps or having it hauled or composting it on site or whatever, have them contact us because you get a decal for your window. It's all free to become a member of, a partner, I should say, of We Compost. And then you get listed on our website on the lists with your logo and a link to the website, as well as we're doing a mapping project for restaurants in different neighborhoods so that if you want to frequent the restaurants that are doing this, you can just look up and go, oh, well, tonight I'll go to that one because they're composting my food scraps. That's really cool. So that information is here. I didn't hand it out to everyone, but you're welcome to come and grab it. One more piece of homework for you all is to talk to your family, friends, your neighbors. If each of you goes out and shares something that you learned today, like, oh my gosh, you can't put plastic bags in the recycling, for example, or something, if you just go share that information with one other person, then we're all making a bigger impact. So please do share this information. And we have more in the back, and maybe Riley can help hand these out, but we have more of the guides and more of the posters if you wanted to pick up a couple more to share as well. One last plug I have as well is those aforementioned recycling events that we hold each year. I'm just going to go back to that slide real quick. We still have room for volunteers at those events, and I always need the help. Mainly, it's nothing heavy lifting. Sometimes I would assign you to the shred area where you unload the documents to be shredded and tip them into a bin and put the boxes back. But mostly, it's just standing there with the clipboard and saying, hi, welcome to the event, where are you from? And you check a little box. And then they go in. You know, so I really do need a lot of help with these, and the volunteer workforce is how we do it. So I have a little sign-in sheet up here at the front if you want to come add your name to that as well. That'd be great. And then I would just add you to the list, and I just send out an email saying, I'm looking for help, and if you can't help, don't respond. And if you can,
At a time, not the whole time, is it? Or
so it's from 8 to noon, and usually people volunteer for the whole day, but if you can just come for 2 hours of it, just tell me that. That would be fine too. And then I can maybe find someone else to fill the other spot. Yeah. And then I think that's about the end, and we have come to the questions part. And I'm just going to say, just for the recording, if you can speak up a little bit, hopefully it will get on there. Yes, sure.
Yeah, would you run through how the haulers pinpoint people who are putting food garbage into the recycling bins?
So in large part, they don't. The question was, how do the haulers identify who's putting food scrap, for example, or nasties into the recycling bin? Well, you know, in large part, they don't. The trucks are just coming along. Those drivers are trying to get a big route done in a certain amount of time, and they're just tipping those carts in. And then that contamination is dealt with at the sorting facility. But there are programs springing up that we're calling the tagging programs. And that's something else that the task force is looking at, and they have done pilots in Chicago. Lake County actually has a lot of tagging programs now through their municipalities. What happens is that they send a driver out, he looks in, and he actually goes like, right, this has a pillow in it, and there's a crock pot down there. I'm not going to pick it up at all. I'm going to leave the whole darn thing, even though some of it's recyclable, because he doesn't have time to sort it. He hangs a tag on there with check marks saying, we're not picking this up today because it's got garbage in it. Please fix the problem, and we'll come back next week and pick it up. Those are quite effective. Some of the statistics that are being seen nationally and in Lake County as well are confirming a 40% improvement in those bins in just short order, like within a couple of weeks. So that catches people's attention. If you don't pick it up and take it away, they're like, whoa, wait, something's wrong, and then they address it. Yeah.
Following up on that question, do the garbage collectors know enough about what is or is not recyclable, that if I could catch them on their rounds, that I could ask them, is this recyclable?
Probably not. Because the drivers are one thing. There's so many people working for those hauling companies. They're not the educators. They are the drivers and the haulers. So, and they might have an idea that they know,
Yeah.
and they might give you misinformation. So I would hesitate to say that would be a good idea. But so always, what we're saying at the task force is probably the best source of information is your local government program coordinator, because they're in touch with the facilities that are sorting. Yeah.
Living in St. Charles Township, I notice you don't have them listed amongst the different things here. So does it fall in under anything, or like for battery recycling or for household? Where does some of the townships? So if you live outside the city limits of
Yes.
St. Charles.
Right, so what are your options is what you're asking? Right, so you could call the township and ask them what kind of recycling programs they may have. I suspect they don't have things for batteries and stuff like that, or I may have heard about it. And this is the other thing about this guide is forgive me if it's not completely thorough, because I can only represent what I know about, what I've heard about, what somebody's told me about, and there are definitely things I just haven't heard about. So
calling them to put some pressure on them.
you could do that.
Yeah.
Also, you can say, hey, the city's got a battery recycling program, and you can call Jennifer Jarlin and ask her how you could get one
I think I've
started.
used that before, if I remember right.
Was it successful?
Yeah, I got my recycle bin.
Good. Well, and I can advise on what company's the best company they could recycle batteries through, that sort of thing. So if they want to start programs, I'm happy to advise on how to do that most cost effectively.
On the top, it says, put it out when it's full, you recycle, and I would presume your garbage too. Doesn't that save energy if the truck doesn't have to stop at every driveway?
Right.
That
Yes.
should be promoted.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I just can't imagine there would be too many people without a trash bin every week, but if you don't have it, yeah, I know, there's some, but most people do have it. So I think that that's not something that's been promoted mainly because it's just so infrequent of a need, but that's a good idea. Definitely. This is the thing about rethinking, you've thought that through and figured, well, that's going to save energy, so I'm going to do it. All of us should be thinking like that, and everything that we can possibly think of. Yeah, I'm going to go here.
I have a question here, no comment. When it comes to egg cartons, some of them look like they're styrofoam. Can we put those in the recycling? No.
You can
Okay.
take it to Dark Container Corporation, though, with your other styrofoam recycling, or to our extravaganza.
And then I have a comment. My son lives in a big city, and in his kitchen, he's got this big bucket. And he puts food scraps in there, and then on a regular basis, somebody comes and picks them up. And then in spring, he gets that big bucket filled with wonderful composted soil.
Oh,
Is there
that's
such a
wonderful.
program? Is there
Oh,
such-
yes, there is. So I know of the bucket program. There's a company, the largest one I know of in Chicago area is called Collective Resource. And they started out, Arlene Howard's the owner, founder of that. She started out with just a few buckets and operating in her pickup truck, And now it's this huge, huge company that they do the clean bucket exchange program. And you can have it on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis, depending on what your needs are. I did it over the winter because I compost in my backyard in Chicago. And in the winter, it stops composting and becomes wrap buffet out there. So this year I was like, okay, I'm going to have to throw it in the garbage, I guess, because I'm not putting it out there anymore. And then I thought, well, what am I thinking? I'm going to get Arlene to bring me a bucket. So I called and said, can I do it just for the winter? And she said, absolutely. So I did it every 2 weeks throughout the whole winter.
Is there a charge for that? or-
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's a service. It's a service that's provided. They come around with, they plan their routes, but they come on a Tuesday morning or whatever the day is. They'll give you a schedule. But then they are working with a composting facility where they deliver all that and it's being turned into compost. But what I had never heard of is having a bucket arrive full of the soil amendment. That's really cool. That's a great program. And there are several of these companies. I've seen them around. I look down and go, oh, that's a new company I've never heard of that's doing a bucket somewhere.
Is there anything like that in Kane County?
In Kane County, no, not to my knowledge. But that would be a great idea for an entrepreneur. If there are any around, start spreading that idea. That would be a wonderful thing. Yeah.
You know, I guess in my ignorance, I put all that stuff out all through the winter, and then there was a lot of leaves and stuff in the fall, and it just disappeared once it warmed up, so.
Yeah,
Like
if you
my-
don't have a rodent problem, you can do that. I did it for years in Boulder, just keep putting it out there and it will eventually start breaking down when it warms up. That's fine. Yeah, oh yeah, always want to mix it, not just a dump and run food pile. And did you have a question?
In your picture, where you minimized your waste, it looked like there was a pizza box there. Is it okay to put pizza boxes in, with the bottom?
Okay, so recycling or compost. So in the recycling, if you want to, they don't want, that was another big point of contention with the task force discussions is are they or are they not recyclable? The thing is yes and no. The bottom with the cheese and the oil on it, no. But if you want to take the time to rip it in half and recycle the top and trash the bottom, you can. Also, you can tear the bottom up into little pieces and compost it in your backyard compost if you have one too. Yeah, so yes and no. Yes.
Do you have to take the plastic off of the boxes, the cardboard boxes that come, they're wrapped in plastic, and do you have to rip that plastic off?
Right, the wrapped in plastic part, yes. If they're like shrink wrapped in plastic,
No.
but if
Just
it's
to
tape
close it.
and stuff, then you don't have to take it off.
Yeah, they have methods to do that in the pulp mill.
Yeah, same with envelope windows and staples and things like that are on paper. They get mashed through a screen and all that stuff is removed. But if you want to take it off and throw it away, also that's helpful in the long run. But talking about the shrink wrap thing, there are more plastics than just plastic bags that can be recycled in these grocery store plastics recycling programs. So have a look at that list. It includes like your paper towel rolls, your toilet paper roll wrapping, that kind of plastic. So also the stretch wrap that we see on a lot of things can go into this program too. So, yeah. All right.
So for the little plastic containers, not a container, things are wrapped in the kind of that clear hard plastic. That's got to go in the landfill, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a really big problem that I think, unfortunately they often make. It's like a little tiny product and then you've got this giant piece of plastic that it comes in, So there are people doing that work too, to try to work with the manufacturers of the products and the packaging to say, stop, please make it out of paper, make it out of something more recyclable.
That's for shoplifting.
I know. And there's lots of reasons. Also, plastic is a miracle thing, it keeps our food really fresh and there are lots of great uses for it. It's just gotten out of hand, so.
I called the director of sustainability for Costco and lodged a complaint about saying, I love your stuff, but can you use less plastic?
Yeah.
And so, if they get enough letters and phone calls.
Yep.
Are you supposed to recycle batteries now, or, because I took all mine into Montgomery where I usually, and they said, oh no, we don't do that anymore, just throw them away.
Yeah, it's another one of those things. It's market driven, it's very expensive to recycle batteries, so a lot of places don't want to do it. And the manufacturers of the batteries are very vocal in saying they're fine to just throw in the garbage because, there's nothing in there that didn't come out of the earth anyway. And I've heard all kinds of little rosy stories about how they're fine. But the thing is that, and on a residential level, they're not illegal to throw in the landfill. They're actually exempt from that law. Businesses can't throw large quantities in the garbage, but residents can. But it's not good. It's not ideal. All of that adds up. There's cadmium, mercury, all kinds of nasty stuff in batteries. My advice with batteries is to buy yourself a little charger and use rechargeable batteries. Yes, they cost more, but they last a lot longer and you can use them like 12 to 15 times over and just as good before you have to recycle them. And then they are highly recyclable. Rechargeable batteries have a lot more stuff in them that can be easily recycled. The single-use batteries are harder to recycle, and they just go so quickly, and then you just end up with this massive. But we do have programs throughout the county. There's a list in the guide of drop-off locations for those, so I do recommend it.
What about like tool batteries, cordless tool batteries?
Yep, those you can bring to our electronics recycling events or drop-offs.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Or Home Depot takes them too.
Or Home Depot. Home Depot will also take car batteries and, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then we do have a fluorescent tube recycling program at the Geneva Ace Hardware that I didn't mention that I do like to highlight as well because there's not many of those
I
around.
think Menards
do they
takes
show?
one also.
Some places do, but sometimes they'll take them for a while and then next time you go in they don't, so that same sort of thing. So I know the Geneva Ace Hardware is a sure thing because that's something that's one of my programs that we're supporting through the county. All right, I think we're at time. So I want to thank you all so much for your care and for your time in coming here today. And if you have any follow-up questions, give me a buzz.